Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens.
There's some stories in dentistry that you just kind of almost don't see coming. They're businesses that on-hold communications is pretty well known in dentistry. But that backstory is just... It all just kind of makes sense, doesn't it, as to why Saima is as she is?
Yeah, and definitely. I think the other thing that, as we said to her, is that because you're sort of well known and you've been going a long time, nobody ever knows about the the start of it all and where you got to. And I think it's probably nice. Well, it's nice for us, but hopefully it's nice for the people listening, and also probably nice for Saima to be able to tell that story, because you probably stopped telling that story after about year 4 or something, don't you?
But also all of her hundreds of clients may not necessarily know all of that backstory about how she came to the country. They just see and on-hold communications, and that hard time when kind of her father wasn't as around much. I think people will take a lot from that, and I love that there's always little nuggets and little gems in there that you can kind of pick up and use yourself.
I thought she was really interesting.
It's really good.
And nice.
So today we have a very, very special guest joining us.
A special guest.
Special guest. And we are delighted, absolutely delighted, that we have the founder of On Hold Communications join today. And it's Saima Butt. How are you, Saima? Are you well?
I'm well, thank you, Andy. Chris, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Not at all. We're delighted that you've been able to join us, and we're really looking forward to hearing your story and about your business and about your mum's curries. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later on.
But can we just put you on hold for the moment?
Oh, see what I did there? Yeah, there we go. Very nice.
Depends what I'm listening to. Depends what I'm listening to.
There we go.
Very good. Very good. Anyway, before we get into the business side of things, let's get right back to the beginning. What are the things that we need to know about you from your early years to understand the person you've become? What was your childhood like?
Childhood. So I was actually born in Kenya.
Okay.
And we didn't move here till I was 6-7 years old. So my early childhood was spent in the sun. We lived a part of our lives by the beach as well. Close family, a small family, just my father, mother, and one little sister. And and then we came to the UK. Dad went straight to the Middle East from there, so saw very little of Dad, unfortunately, growing up, which kind of made the bond between Mum, my sister, very, very close, very close. There's just 3 ladies in the house. A very new experience for my mum, for us. It was a complete culture shock.
What did your dad do, Saima?
My dad's in sales.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's in sales, but for international territories in electrical. So he was always a techie man, and I guess that's kind of my mind. And he'd sit with me, when we met, he'd often sit with me and talk me through things. So I guess my brain just kind of was wired that way from the beginning.
So that must have been quite hard for you. So I guess you've got some very early but faded memories of Kenya if you came over when you were 6. And then there were periods of months where you just didn't see your father?
Yeah, Dad would visit. Very hard, very hard. Also, I think we were very young. I think probably more so for my mum, and seeing those effects and seeing her coping with walking us to school in the snow. Snow is something we'd never seen. It was so new to us. The dark nights. I think we came in the month of July, I remember, because the days were super long, and it was like, wow, this place is amazing. Like, the days are so long. We have sunshine, and it was all about sort of trips to Hyde Park with my cousins. So my whole dad's family was already, very much settled in the UK. And so that's where we ended up, and where Dad was going to then be traveling and sort of looking after the Middle East and Africa region. He wanted Mum, me and my sister to be with family, with extended family. So that was why you came to the UK then? That was the driver, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Where was home? Is that sort of London or
home
elsewhere?
Is South London in Croydon.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, South London. And this is where they all were, my whole family, and still very much are. Everyone's based in the South. So that was sort of early years. And it just made a super tight knit with my mum. She, my biggest inspiration, to be honest with you. just in the face of hardships. And she had many to struggle with because she left everything she knew there. And kind of seeing that was, it was tough. It was tough as a kid. But I think it makes you resilient. Everything's not always peachy, but it was great. It just formed such an amazing bond.
Yeah, it's funny that thing you say about resilience, isn't it? There's lots of talk about resilience and how do you get resilience into young people, and you got your resilience through the experience. And if you hadn't gone through that experience, you wouldn't have, because resilience is within you, isn't it? It's like your own resilience. You have to
can't learn it from a book.
No, you can't kind of pass it on.
To be resilient.
But hearing you say it makes you resilient, and as a young person, that's a great life skill to have early on, because particularly, and we'll come on to kind of your kind of business life. It's not always plain sailing.
I was going to say, what was school like? If you're 6 coming into a school, well, that must have been an interesting experience.
Yeah.
Could you speak English back then, Saima? Or?
Well, we went to an English school. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we were there, even my kindergarten was a British St. Mark's. I remember it well. It was all English schools. It was all the English education system there. So English was actually, my written English was apparently better than, I was way ahead of myself, English, maths. And I kind of had to get told to kind of slow down in class.
Ease back a bit. Yeah.
Ease back. And I'd go back to mum, and I'd go back to mum and say, Mum, do you know, on maths, they're still doing this. She was like, what? And we'd been doing that sort of previously, maybe a year ago, back in Kenya. So yeah, I think certainly the earlier education was far ahead for me. I was writing joined up, and I was told to start sort of unjoining my writing and start writing. So it kind of almost felt like a backward step initially.
That's really hard as well. I imagine that must be really hard to sort of undo something you've learned.
Yeah, but that's the way school works. School works on averages, doesn't it? And I think the kind of school and the curricular system's brilliant if you're Johnny Average or Jennifer Average. But if you're one way or the other, it doesn't work. So for somebody like you, it sounds ridiculous that you've kind of got to wind back the stuff you've learned to fall in line with average,
with everybody else. Absolutely. And what was it like? What were the children like in the school? Were they sort of quite welcoming, or were they a bit weird?
Do you know what? I found I had to do obviously a lot of work and well out of my comfort zone, so kids being kids would ask me a million questions. So what's it like there? And, they had their own kind of notion about what Africa in itself was like. And I was like, no, there's nothing like that, So I think intrigue would get people to speak to me a lot. But yeah, like I said, a lot of that effort had to be made for me because they were very much kind of friends and everyone was kind of together. And I was, I guess I was the odd one at the time. So again, you have to come home and say, my mum would be obviously very concerned. Did you make any friends today? Kind of regular questions that you get asked. I was like, no, it was good. It was good. And I guess I was always a bit of an outgoing personality because Andy, if you ever get to meet my mum, Chris, you'll realise, hell yeah, or 2 or 3. But I'm just like her. Honestly, everyone just says that you're just a copy of her. So yeah, I guess it wasn't really difficult from memory, to be honest. And I loved sports. Did every sport. Was went on even in high school to be sort of the captain of every team because I just really, really enjoyed sports. Did a lot of it back home in Kenya as well. And so just came here and just carried that on. And that was, again, a massive thing for me. That it was quite big here, so you had your netball, you had your rounders, your hockey. That was all good fun, really good fun.
It's quite nice to hear your experience has been good because we speak to lots of people who've joined us from overseas and they're now core to the dental community and friends, but you hear it's quite heartbreaking to hear the stories of when they came to the UK and they might have suffered racism or just felt lonely and stuff. So it's quite nice to hear that you were welcomed.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, I'll be honest with you, I guess it's where you are as well. And I think Croydon has always been very multicultural. So, I wasn't the only brown kid in the school, as it were. So there was a lot of Asian children who, at that point, you kind of you're looking for relatability right? Because everyone looks different.
So
it wasn't hard, and teachers were great as well. Got on with everyone, and they really supported me through. Which again, I know that's not everyone's experience, but yeah, I can only talk positively of that.
Yeah, that's good.
That's great.
And then it sounds like you perhaps lent on some of your father's experience from the sort of the tech side of things, because you did IT at university as a degree.
Business. I did business and marketing.
Right.
Yeah, my BA was. Okay. I could have just done the usual business admin, but I chose to do business and marketing because I always had a creative side to me as well. So I thought, well, I'll kind of do a combined degree, and I'll put marketing into that as well, because it always interested me. The branding and all that kind of thing. And even my dissertation was on Pepsi Cola actually, and when Pepsi went blue from the white can. So it was based on branding. So was it successful? The rebrand and so on. Always like that side of things.
You sound quite front foot. So,
yes.
When going to school, doing the sports, and doing that stuff, it's quite interesting because obviously that has helped. Develop where you are. It's quite fascinating, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh. Well, no, and from my encounter with you, you're very front foot. And then you went into the world. Then you went into the world. No, you are.
Did she stand on yours or something? So it sounds like she was
tiny, by
front
the way.
foot. Oh, there we go. There you go.
There's only one person that'd be standing on anyone. I'm tiny compared to. I was going to
say I'm not tiny. So then you went into the world of telecoms. So you took your degree and your learning. You went into that world. Was telecoms a passion, or was it just a job?
No, it was. Obviously you come out of university and you're like, what do I do? And I applied to all the big companies. I applied to like Coca-Cola, BA. Nothing came from that. And then a friend of mine said, I've got a friend who has a telecoms company in Kingston, who was at the time the biggest.
I've got a friend. It's almost like I actually have got a friend.
I've got a friend.
It's like I'm trying to justify. I've got a friend. No. Seriously, I have got a friend. Yes. Sorry, I butted in there. It just made me laugh.
It's okay. It's all right. So so he had a telecoms company, which is probably the biggest accessories. Remember when non-genuine accessories for mobile phones were like a massive thing, and every time bought a mobile phone, you'd get a hands-free, a leather case, and a car charger with it. So they did those kind of trio packs. I'm beginning to show my age rapidly here. So it was a company called the Accessory People, TAP. So that was my first job, and I applied as a marketing assistant under the marketing manager for that. And really, really enjoyed it. Did all their promotions, their email shots and things like that. Designed those on PowerPoint back then. And these email shots would go out once a week, and then the phones would just go mental. So every mobile phone distributor in the country would basically phone every mobile phone shop and order just thousands of these kits to give away with their contract phones. And then I started giving the director advice on sales and things. And he said, why did you apply for a marketing job? You should be in sales. And I was like, no, I don't want to be in sales. I like the creative aspect of it. I like designing these things. But I think off the back of that, you could do this and I just got funneled into a sales job. And then I got headhunted from there to another company called Sprint that were based in Park Royal in northwest London. I just went from marketing to sales.
Right, yeah. And
they are very distinct.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny, isn't it, that people kind of they put them in the same
together.
bucket.
Sales and marketing director.
Yeah, sales and marketing. As a pair, they sit quite nicely, don't they? But yeah, you're right.
Completely different.
Marketing and sales, it's like, someone's a good footballer, so you make them a football manager. They're not the same. They're not.
We know how that goes.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's not talk about Frank Lampard.
So did you?
Oh, Chris.
So did you not enjoy the sales side as much as you enjoyed the marketing? Is that kind of where you're sort of going with that?
Do you know what? Initially, I didn't, because it was just so pressurized. These phones would just go off, and you just speak to one person. Everyone was after a deal, and it was just like, oh gosh, how have I ended up here? But one thing I always enjoyed was speaking to people, relationships, and again, I'll bring my mum back into this, but she said, working on relationships was like one of the most important things, and it would take you, if you invested in your relationships, then that would really, really serve you well in life, and seeing those relationships grow. And
it's good advice. Really good advice.
Definitely. So I loved speaking to people, and I then became head of the biggest accounts for that company because those people wanted to deal with me. So it was lovely. Yeah, the aspect of the talking to people and the kind of account management side of thing was really good. Enjoyed that.
Cool. And then you say, we had a chat before we started. And you said you wanted to work for yourself. I thought if you apply the same enthusiasm and energy you give to your job to my own business, it might just work. Which I think is great in that you're saying there's more than this. But Chris and I have this whole thing that's a long way from starting your own business. And in life, I'm a firm believer that you need a push and a pull. If there's going to be significant change, you need to be drawn towards something, which I guess ultimately has become on-hold communications, and we'll have a chat about that. But what was it that kind of pushed and pulled you at that time? Because having an idea and going from an idea to actually setting up your own business.
Taking a risk.
I was going to say, the world is full of wannapreneurs. There's so many wannapreneurs. These are people that they kind of listen to podcasts, they read books, they go on courses, but they don't ever take action. So what was it in you that meant that you became an entrepreneur, you took that action?
I think it's weird. I think I always wanted to kind of make my parents proud. I guess that was my push, and I think this would, especially my dad. He always said, "Look, you don't know what direction your life could take you in," and the sort of backgrounds that we come from, it's quite mapped out for us. You get your education, and then you get married, and etc., etc., etc. And it's quite pained out. But one thing he said, "Look, my dad wasn't as traditional in that way. He was very much about his two daughters should be educated, should be able to kind of look after themselves, and aspire to do well. Whatever you do, put 100% into it." And kind of what better way to see that out, almost like a case study. What better way to sort of have an idea, show him that I could implement that and make that a success. And having mum on my side, like my biggest cheerleader, it was, again, it's, I guess it was just, that was my driver really. The push was definitely, wanting to do this and make my family proud and show them that this is something that I've achieved for myself. I did this. Hey, this is what it is. I think that's the biggest thing it was for me.
I think that's really cool. Was your dad back in the UK now, or was this kind of still a remote relationship?
Very remote. Yeah, our dad only came back into the UK about 6 years ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
35 years in the Middle East. My dad was, yeah.
Right.
I think he liked the lifestyle there, but he liked the travel. Again, it's probably where I've got the travel bug from as well. But he loved to travel. He loved to travel. He loved to see people, ironically, talk to people, build relationships. And it's weird. I think you just kind of morph into these people without realizing it. I was
going to say, they're all the things that you love about life as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's like osmosis. It sort of creeps in. So when did you set up your business?
2002.
Wow.
On hold. Yeah, 2002. The last job I had prior to setting it up was in an audio marketing company, and I just, it was such a new market here. In the US, it was massive at the time, but in the UK, we hadn't even scratched the surface for on-hold marketing, the potential that could have. So I thought, well, this is new. This is a niche. The only thing that the UK knew about on hold was green sleeves. And that's people would kind of listen endlessly to green sleeves while they were trying to get through. Frustrating, companies would lose business. So I thought, well, this is great. In a way, on hold marketing, it would bring in some of my marketing experience, because be it verbal and, working with voiceover artists and kind of devising these on hold marketing messages, but also the marketing and the branding side of your own business, I thought I could really showcase both these things together. And so came On Hold Comms.
Was it just you on your own to start with, or did you have a team?
It was me and one of my best friends at the time, actually in the start. Nadia was also part of that. But yeah, Arfan, who's very much part of the company, has been by my side from day one. You know, he was there with me. I met him at college. And again, see, it's relationships for me, you know, and we've been together 21 years now doing this, and people know Arfan probably as much as, if not more than me, because once the sales side is done, he deals with all the after sales side of things. It was the two of us. We're still here. It's still a very small team because it's about giving people a personal experience for me.
And what was it like in the early days? You know, quite often, you know, we see successful businesses like your own that seem to just kind of be in the fabric of dentistry. But what was it like in the early days? How hard was it? What were the things that you were surprised that you had to learn, and the bits that have kind of really stuck with you from
what was the hardest?
Because you're a founder. You're a founder.
Yeah.
Lots of people.
Always tricky.
Lots of people will buy a business, but literally opening the door with a blank piece of paper and saying, right, how are we going to do this? How hard was it?
It was really difficult. Really difficult. And you know, being a woman in telecoms wasn't easy. Even talking to your suppliers and so on. You know, you'd go and have supplier meetings and they'd look straight over me and onto Arfan. It was like, hello.
Really?
Wow.
I'm going to sign the checks. Talk to me. I'm here.
I see you brought your secretary with you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, well, literally. Oh, yeah. Literally. Even the early meetings I went into, people wouldn't talk to me. I was kind of taking notes quietly in the corner, observing, you know, quite happy to. I don't have an issue with that. But it was difficult. And I think for us, and in particular getting into dentistry, one of the biggest challenges we faced was trying to convince dentists that we weren't just selling them a glorified answering machine, you know, that they could pick up in curries for £50. So you'd go in and you'd be like, but we don't need that. We just need an answering machine. I was like, no, you really do, because your phones are engaged the whole time.
Yeah.
But I think because the patient journey wasn't such a big thing then as it is now. Now we're talking about patient journeys. You know, back then it was very much, you know, practices focused on their NHS base.
I was going to ask you that. Did you notice after the new contract and then sort of things that how your clientele has changed, I'd imagine?
Oh, massively. You know, they now see the opportunity in it. Back then, it was really hard to sell. You were selling a concept that they just didn't think they needed. Simple as that. But now, you know, today it's viewed as a key opportunity to retain business, to reduce caller abandonment, and so on. But yeah, back then their phones would ring nonstop, and I had dentists saying to me, "It's okay if it's engaged; they'll call back. It's not a problem." Why am I going to pay this subscription a month?
And also back then,
that's interesting, isn't it?
They weren't well. People would, and I suppose where there was a more significant proportion of the population accessing NHS dentistry, that's what they did. And also they were quite forgiving, whereas now people will hop between dental practices much more readily. Just to kind of give us a bit of an anchor here, can you just explain to us what it is that On Hold Communications does? What did your company do for dental practices?
Should we pause there?
Yeah.
Play some music.
We provide complete telecom solutions. So the whole infrastructure, your phones, your internet, your Wi-Fi, call recording, call reporting. So the metrics on those, you know, on the calls that come in, how many calls they're missing. So it's very much become an integral part of the business, and especially in private dentistry, you know, our strap that we use a lot is, what is the cost of a missed call, you know? And the minute you say that now to a dentist, it resonates straight away, because I say, well, look, you know, Invisalign, like you miss an Invisalign inquiry, what's that worth? You know, straight away, you're talking 4 figures. So then, you know, X amount a month doesn't sound like too much. And it's a scalable solution now. So it's a cloud-based solution. It's subscription-based. So it's very good. It can be as small, so even for a small squat, £30 a month, for example, and you've got everything that I've just spoken to you about within that. Whereas before you couldn't do it when things were hardware based. So essentially just providing complete telecom solutions, bidding to end, and then advising them on how they should be managing their calls and giving ongoing training based on that as well. Showing them how to use call recording to help train their staff, on how things should be done, how things shouldn't be done. It's an incredible tool for insight.
So it's really moved on from the beginning, which was
exactly
basically on hold messaging or on hold music.
Correct, yeah, because we'd go in to sell on hold and we'd realise that majority of businesses in the UK, especially dental practices, didn't even have a phone system, and initially exactly, one line, and the fax was on there, and the PDQ machine was on there.
Do you remember those days when you couldn't answer the phone because someone was taking a payment on a PDQ?
I'd forgotten
about that.
There's still a few out there with that. Believe me,
it is bonkers when you think about it. Talk about business obstruction tools. Unbelievable.
This episode is brought to you with our charity partner, Wells on Wheels. Did you know that many girls in Indian villages miss out on education because they have to spend hours fetching water for their families? Wells on Wheels is changing that with the water wheel invention. A water wheel is a rollable drum that can carry 5 times as much water as a single bucket, making it easier for adults to collect more water in a single trip without risking injury and freeing up young girls from never having to collect water again. With the help of Wells on Wheels, over 2,000 girls are now attending school regularly. Join the cause and help the lives of ambitious girls today. For just £28, a water wheel can transform their futures immediately. Learn more and donate at wellsonwheels.co.uk. Now back to the episode.
Exactly. And you just think, well, missed calls actually means missed revenue. But yeah, it's just like you said at the time, it was a different precedents, they'll call back. It's not a problem. But now they realize how important, and that patient journey begins with that first call, because 60% of first contact is still made on the phone. And that's,
that's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, people think people just do web inquiries and so on, but it's still the majority percentage of people still pick up the phone. Now that may change.
Yeah. That may change. But also, I just think dentistry has just got way more competitive. We speak to lots of dentists in the different things that we do, and it's got way more competitive, and particularly when you're talking about some of those premium services. You mentioned Invisalign, where there's high margin treatments out there. The competition for those is enormous. So if somebody does make contact your practice, you want to make sure that they're harnessed and loved and dealt with in a professional way, so that you can really maximise the conversion of those.
That's it.
How was it that you decided upon dentistry as your niche? Because that's not an obvious one for what you do to where you are. How was it that you ended up supporting dentistry?
It was, funnily enough, it all started with a dental appointment, believe it or not. Yeah. Sounds crazy, but I had the most wonderful dentist, Dr. Mani Vasan. I believe he's now retired, but yeah, very, very well respected, very well known back then. Yeah. And just generally, he's giving me my usual checkup, and he said, so what are you doing now, Saima? Your mum says that you started your own business. I said, yeah, I have actually. I said, got an audio marketing company, and we do on-hold messaging. He actually had a phone system, so he was well ahead. He was well ahead of his time even then. And people used to benchmark themselves against him like all the time. And he said, well, I've got a Panasonic phone system. Would that work on a Panasonic system? I said, oh, yeah, brilliant. Yeah, of course it would. He goes, right, okay, how much is it going to cost? Wrote me a check out there and then. I went back and I was like, oh, fan, I've got my first dental practice on board. And he said, no, didn't you just go for an appointment? I said, yeah, I did. But look, Manny's written me a check out and me too. And and that was it. And he was very close to, worked very closely with a Henry Schein rep back then, Jackie Purvis, who sadly passed away and is no longer here. But he said, look, I'm going to introduce you to Jackie, and she's going to put you in touch because I think you've got a great product and I really want to support you.
Wow.
And and I'm going to put you in touch. And got in touch with her, had a coffee with her, I remember, when she came down to see Manny. And we just never looked back from there because he just introduced us to so many people, as did she.
Brilliant.
And it's a small market, everyone talks to everyone. And it was great. I think we did it.
And your mum started it all.
Look at that.
Well, and
greatest supporters ever, mothers, aren't they?
Yeah, but that thing you said about your mum and your dad, your mum being your greatest cheerleader, your dad kind of instilling in you the importance of relationships, and that then manifests itself with the relationship you have with Manny, your dentist, who then introduced you to someone from Henry Schein, and you build a relationship there. And 22 years later, you've got on-whole communication.
You can see the threads, can't you? All there, they're all wove together.
Yeah, it's crazy. Manny. It's funny because I'd always be scared of him because he'd tell me off. So it was like going to see your dad. You loved him, but really, I had so much respect for him, and how's your exams going? You studying? I hope you're not distracting yourself with anything. I was like, no, I'm studying hard. He goes, all right, I want to see good results. And, that would be the kind of conversations we'd have. And it was great. Yeah. It was great. Yeah. So when this came up, exactly that, he just said, look, put it in here first and let's see how we go. And, his friends started calling up, listening to it, colleagues, and it's like, oh, Manny, this is great. So, Saima, speak to Saima. Just be getting lots of Manny's dental colleagues on my mobile phone, asking for the same. So it's great.
There can't be many people in dentistry that have owned and run a business for as long as you. 21 years. That's
you must have been quite young.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 12.
I think you might be lying,
but that's so you've kind of told us kind of how it's gone.
That's the sales, isn't it?
Yeah. But what's the best thing that it's done for you? What's been the hardest thing? What are the extremes of it? How good has it gone? How bad has it got?
Do you know what, Andy? I'd be lying if I said that was bad. We've been through 2-3 recessions. And, touch wood, just always been really, really blessed. Now, again, I don't know whether that's that formation of relationships, but even through COVID. Okay, so COVID, challenging. I guess COVID was our biggest challenge because obviously all dental practices kind of shut down.
Yes.
And for the first time in 19 years at the time, 20 years, it was just like the phones weren't ringing. And it was just like, oh, wow. What's going to happen? And I think it was for everyone, really. It wasn't just for us. Yeah. But the amount, apart from delivery, I mean, the amount of phone calls that I got or WhatsApp messages to say, look, we're still here. We'll be back. Can we pause our direct debits for now? Do you mind? Because literally there is zero income. I was like, absolutely no problem. Pause them away. No one's working right now. It's absolutely fine. And I think the way that we reacted to their kind of adversity at the time, having to shut down suddenly, call diverts, that first 2 or 3 days, we were receiving in the region of 300 to 400 calls, and we were working from 7 a.m. to about 8, 9 at night. And that's just putting diverts on for dental practices.
Yeah.
I think there's some of the actions that you take then because you could have probably said, no, we're not going to pause your direct debits under our agreement. But I think things like that are what sets you apart and builds those relationships for sure.
Chris, they go a long way.
Because people remember, they've got long memories, haven't they? They remember when you stood by them, because at those early months, nobody really knew what was going to happen, did they? It was all a bit weird, really.
No one knew. And it's for the first time, I think people were actually worried. When we open up, is it ever going to be the same? Sadly, I know a couple of practices that never did reopen, or then sold, sold their clinics because the stress was just too much. But I think it's showing understanding at that point is just so important.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
And what you say is right. We've been through, we've been through a number of recessions, but there's history books that tell us how long a recession lasts and what it looks like. It might be a V, it might be a W recession, but we kind of come through a recession. So there's an experience, but we'd never been through a pandemic, because
never.
I guess the Spanish flu was probably the last one, and people weren't really around for that. So no, even you. So there wasn't really a rule book for how a modern economy would cope with that. But I think what you did and what lots of smart people did is they kind of went back to first principles and said, look, how do I want to be treated, and how do I deliver good service, accepting the situations of it uneasy at the moment. And I think the people that did that, and the people that stepped forward and provided support and help and guidance, those are the people who actually have done well coming out the back of it. And so they should do.
Stand with you.
Yeah, so they should do, because we know there were lots of organisations, and some of them within dentistry, who didn't do that. They were like, no, pay your bills. I don't care about what's happening. You need to just keep doing what you're doing. Whereas most of the profession actually kind of rallied together and kind of everybody helped one another. And that's great to see here that you did that, and it served you well, and so it should.
Oh, thank you, Andy. Yeah, no, it's just whatever we could do to help at the time, and I think for us, if you just look at any of the reviews, or we tend to be mentioned quite a bit on the Dentist for Dentists Facebook forum. Right, when people kind of ask for recommendations on telecoms providers, and I think it's just one thing that comes up time and time again is their service. It's accessibility. Whenever you need them, you can get hold of them. Which for a lot of people, it's very 9 to 5, and telecom certainly. You call BT past a certain time, and you'll go through to an overseas call center, and you just won't be able to get through to anyone.
Yeah.
But
and we all know what that feels like as well, which is pretty rubbish. Do you just exclusively operate in dentistry, or do you have some accounts outside of dentistry?
Do you know what we do? But very few now. Right, okay. Like I'd say, when I say 99.99% is dentistry, it's just got our hands full with that. And it's good to have one focus. I think I do believe that. Yeah. But from the earlier days, we've still. Funny enough, is people don't tend to leave us. So from the earlier days, we've got a few travel companies, like big corporate travel companies, that still get their on-hold marketing through us. Not the phones, ironically, but the marketing is still done through us on the audio side of things. But there's a few property businesses that still use us. But it's dentists, and that's it. Yeah.
Cool. We've met a couple of times at some dental events recently, and you were telling me about your mum's curries, and you were saying mum still brings curries around, and you were saying how great they are. But I had got this real sense from you that it wasn't just about the food, it was about like the family culture. And is it really important to you, that kind of food and family? Is that something that actually is quite deep in your family?
Oh God, it's honestly, you would not believe it. We're a family that we wake up. Well, actually, we go to sleep talking about what we're going to have for breakfast the next morning. At breakfast, you're talking about lunch, and at lunch, you're discussing dinner, and it's literally your planning and
just bouncing from food session to food session.
This is it. But one thing Mum said, she said, that food is love. She said, and sharing food is the easiest and most genuine way to spread love. And
I don't know. Some people have had my cooking. I'm not sure they felt love. I'll tell you.
But well, Andy.
Initially, the sharing was a good idea. Maybe the participation.
Yeah. And I think her point was, look, for someone to cook for you, they've taken their time out. And we, South Asian cooking takes time. And you cook with a lot of love, a lot of passion. When you're doing that, you're thinking about those people that are going to then come and eat it. And it's funny because I go into restaurants, and my regular restaurants that we go to, I'll literally say to the chef, I said, look, make sure you cook it with love. It needs your love. And they'll just laugh at me, but they know what I mean. They know what I mean. So, and I think that's what it is. Again, she loves to cook. She's a massive feeder. Feeder, and growing up, to this day, her idea of fun is she wants to cook for you,
Right, yeah.
Her chicken biryani is a massive hit. Her lamb biryani is a hit. But it's a tonic for everything for Mum, and remember where she spent so much time alone. This was her outlet, right? Her outlet was, right, girls are going to come home from school. I want to give them something nice to eat. And, whatever kind of day you'd have, if you were down about something, she'd say, right, what would my daughter like to eat today? So that was her kind of tonic for, bad. And if you'd had, some good news, or you celebrating exam results or anything, she's like, right, what do you want me to cook? So it's the same thing for everything, but it works. It just works because it means you're sat around a table, you're sharing time, and inevitably that's all they want.
So
that's all that anyone wants, right? Can I cook? I can. I can cook. Yeah, not as well as my mum, although she says I'm getting close. But I'm
getting
not.
Close.
Oh yeah, she'll say, "Oh, this tastes a bit like mine." I think she's being polite. But yeah, no, I cook for them often. I cook for them often as well. But yeah, no, do love it. Do love food, love cooking. Yeah.
And kind of related to it, you told us that in your handbag you've always got a little packet of chili flakes. Is this to kind of just add your own little spice to life as you head around the place?
This is. You see, Beyonce said I carry hot sauce in my bag, but I carried it long before she even sang about it. That's honestly, you get these little Tabasco bottles on like a keyring. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. But the chili flakes thing is pretty good, you see, because you can just season it up a little bit.
You sound like my daughter, my oldest daughter. She went travelling around Central America, and after that she was like, everything's a bit bland. So she's like chili flake girl.
Yeah. Some things, I think I'm getting a little bit better, where I think try and appreciate sort of certain cuisines for what they're supposed to be. But it's just so bad,
Can you imagine taking her out for dinner? That'd be quite entertaining, wouldn't it? Where would you go? Like somewhere like Scott's and Mayfair, very nice restaurant, and suddenly like your Dover Soul appears, and
do you know what?
Out you get your little chili flakes and whack it over.
I remember going to the Oxo Tower, and they put this pea soup in front of me, and honestly, I didn't for the life of me know what to do with myself. I just kind of looked at it, tried some, and it was delicious as far as pea soup goes.
Yeah, but you felt it needed a kick.
My chili flakes came out, honestly.
Excellent.
God, I'm so terrible.
Excuse me, madam. Can you put your flakes away, please?
No one saw. I've got it down to a fine art.
Do you get it out your sleeve or something? Like in that film. What was that film where they dug a tunnel? The Great Escape, where they got the earth out their trousers. Yeah. It's a bit like that. Just shaking my hand over the bowl or whatever.
I think your story's brilliant. I think the way that the whole family has kind of influenced your career and how you made that bold step to form your business and how you've evolved it over the years. I think it is. I think it's like I say, it's a lovely story. And then this is the beauty of doing the podcast. We get to hear the backstory, because lots of people know about on-hold communication because you're well known, you attend the shows, people use your services. But I think that history is wonderful.
And I think the thing is, the longer you're established, people don't bother asking about that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because no one thinks about how you did it. They just see you, and no one actually says, so how did it all start then? So I think it's great to hear.
It's those foundations that kind of, and it sort of makes sense. It, having got to know you and seen about your services and how you go about it, that backstory now kind of joins it all together. It makes perfect sense why you are as you are, because of your father and because of your mother and because of your upbringing and because you had to kind of make friends when you came over from Kenya. It all kind of pulls together so well.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Oh, it's been great, guys. Really, really good fun.
But you don't get away without answering our two questions. That's the way this works. This is the trade-off.
Ready for the deep and meaningful answers.
So the first question we have for you is: if you could be the fly on the wall in a certain situation, where would you be, and who would be there? We're interested.
Do you know what? For me, it'd probably be the dressing room at Manchester United. Not for the obvious reason, which you guys are probably thinking. Obviously, that would be a nice part of it too.
Are you a Man U fan?
I am, yes. Sadly, man. I mean, you're talking about Frank Lampard, but we won't. No. I won't. Yeah.
No, it's all about Ten Hag.
Do you know what? I absolutely love Alex Ferguson. Grew up with him, dominating, and
Yeah.
I just love the guy. Absolutely love the guy. But I think fascinating for me, and the reason for me to be that fly in the wall, is one of his pre-match team talks. And again, just the relationships he had with those players, and how he was able to motivate a group of 11 men, to win countless matches, leagues, trophies for 3 decades, to just do that, year in, year out. It was, it's pretty fascinating, because there's some big egos in that dressing room, over the years.
Oh, massive, massive.
You think about the whole David Beckham incident and so on. And, he was out the door the next day, Roy Keane. I think he had that perfect balance of knowing when to, and I think it's the man management, knowing when to put your arm around someone and knowing, no, this guy's time is up.
Yeah.
And he was just so good. He was just such a great leader for me.
I think he also was able to do it on a individual one-on-one basis. So he wouldn't have looked after Roy Keane in the same way as he would Eric Cantona. They would have been dealt with in completely different. So to understand each of the individual people and have a strategy for how to get the best out of them. When you've got all that testosterone and egos and money and celebrity and all that floating around at the same time, quite a remarkable guy.
It'd be very, very, very fascinating to see. Like even with Ronaldo, it was a peak time in the season when his dad passed away. And Fergie just said, just go home. Right now, you need to be with your family. So go. And he said, I'll never forget that because it was a key time for us. But he was happy to do it without me, you know. And people, like you said, people do not forget that.
No, they don't.
And as a result, he probably gave the club an extra season because of that, you know.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a very good shout. Very good shout. And your second question is, if you could meet somebody, if you were given the opportunity to sit down and have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee with somebody, who would you like to meet?
She probably definitely wouldn't indulge in a glass of wine, but I'd say Malala Yousafzai, the female education activist in Pakistan. Love to meet her. Love to meet her and find out kind of her push and pulls, for what she's done and, received a Nobel Prize at the end of it.
Incredible lady.
Incredible. To be a schoolgirl and have that level of conviction.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Quite a remarkable woman. I'd love to meet her.
Yeah. No, it would be amazing.
Be different.
Saima, it's been truly, truly wonderful. Honestly, it's been a cracking story. Like I say, for me, these are the real hidden gems of dentistry. We know lots of the businesses, and there's lots of characters out there, but these backstories they never cease to amaze me. How interesting they are. Yeah,
always interesting.
Oh, glad I could keep you entertained.
You can relax now.
You did.
Can
yes,
and breathe.
Exactly.
That's your first of many podcasts done now.
Yes.
I'd love to. I'd be a lot more comfortable, I think, the next time. But thank you so much. Whose end timer just went off?
That was me. I've got two boiled eggs coming out of the pan in 30 seconds.
Yeah,
literally.
But no, it has. It's been really good. Like I say, we appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be seeing you at a dental event at some time in the future.
Oh yes, definitely. I think October's the next one. If not for a curry before that, guys, let me know.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. And obviously, you'd need to. We'd have to take your recommendation, of course,
as to where.
Oh yeah,
over your mum's.
No, she'd be more than happy if you could do with the running commentary in the background. But she'd love to. But no, definitely. We'll get something in the diary.
Brilliant.
Thanks very much.
Good to speak to you.
Saima, thank you.
And
cheers.
you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.